Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Wrestling Inc. podcast. Thanks for joining us for a Monday Night Raw recap, the Raw right after SummerSlam, and we are here to go match by match, talk about the latest news, Finn Balor's injury, what happened last night backstage with Brock Lesnar and Chris Jericho, and more. Once again, as always, joined by Raj Giri, Wrestling Inc.'s own, and of course, our regular Monday Night co-host, Matt Morgan, with a guest joining him. Want to introduce everyone to our special guest here?
This is Big Jackson Morgan, my 2-year-old. He's making his big screen debut here, covering his eyes at the moment.
Cool. We look forward to getting his insight as well as we go match by match. Raj and I were talking off air before the show started. Just, man, you got TakeOver. You got 6 hours of wrestling last night with SummerSlam, and then tonight, Monday Night Raw. I would like to meet the people that are still pumped and enthused and just ready to go. Can't wait to see 2 more hours tomorrow night on SmackDown. This feels just like a relentless, nonstop assault of squared circle action. Big picture thoughts to you, Matt. I mean, what did you think of tonight on the heels of last night's SummerSlam?
What do you do with this? You know, Finn Balor's injured. You know what I mean? This was such a huge crescendo, this huge build-up moment. New champion, new face, new everything. And the poor guy's hurt. I mean, that you can't talk about any of this without talking about that, obviously. The show as a whole, though, they could have done a lot more with this, in my opinion. Tonight's episode, which we'll get into, I'm sure, as we hit each match.
It was a
Jackson,
big
not a fan of Roman's push that they're giving at the end, by the way.
Or tonight's Raw.
Yeah.
you know, obviously they were, they had a ton of stuff to deal with last minute regarding Finn Balor's injury, but at the same time, they knew this morning that there was a chance that he could be vacating the title. So they had all day to kind of come up with an alternative plan just in case. And it did seem like early in the show, like they were kind of figuring it out as the show went on. They didn't really, they had a few guys come out in that opening segment, and then like Neville wasn't there, and a couple other guys that were in the tournament weren't there. So it definitely seemed like they were kind of scrambling backstage. But, for a post-pay-per-view show, usually expect post-pay-per-view shows to be hot. And this, it had a couple of moments, but overall I thought it was mostly just a kind of standard fare outside of Bayley coming back, debuting.
Right. You know what, I was just going to say, this is the type of show, especially with an injury. And after Mania, after SummerSlam, after big pay-per-views, there's usually a big debut that comes out. And obviously that's Bayley. I couldn't be more excited for her. She's the biggest babyface this company will have, in my opinion, if they don't screw it up. But my point was, this was the night, in my opinion, to bring Joe. This was the crowd. This was the context. The perfect context to bring Samoa Joe out tonight, and not let people forget about Finn being hurt, but it definitely would be a lot more accepting, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Bayley was great, but yeah, I think they could have used another guy in the main event spot, the main event mix. So I agree.
Well, and true to the unpredictability of Finn's injury last night, the Bayley segment's the only one that really felt planned. It's the only one that had that feeling of, okay, this is business as usual. This is what we were counting on. Everything else sort of felt like, what do we do now? How do we make this interesting but not repeat what we just did in the months build up to SummerSlam with crowning the first ever Universal Champion? So for those that don't know, Raj, do you want to give people the quick recap about Finn Balor's injury and situation?
Yeah, so if you saw during the SummerSlam match, Seth Rollins, he did the his power bomb into the buckles, except he did it outside of the ring, into the barricade. It looked like Matt, let me know what you thought, but to me it looked like he let go a little early, and as Finn Balor was trying to kind of break the fall, his arm was out, and he injured his shoulder. And
that's why right there. It's a release power bomb. You're supposed to run with them and release them, obviously, but he shouldn't have put his arm out. But Finn is a hell of a worker, so I'm sure there was a reason for it.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things that happen. Bad timing.
Yeah, Seth has been getting a lot of heat online, at least, because of he had injured John Cena's nose last year, and the thing with Sting. Did it look like he was being unsafe in any way to you, Matt, or was it just one of those crazy things that happened?
Yeah, it's one of those crazy things, and I hope he doesn't slow anything down because of it. He's one of my favorite guys to watch, him and Owens, both. I love watching Rollins. I think he's the complete package. I think he's still improving on the mic and feeling himself out as a character, but I love watching him work, so I hope this doesn't make him start to taper back with what he does out there. Like the kicks to the head tonight in the match versus Zayn. If he was inside his own head and worried about injuring people, I don't think he'd be doing that move there tonight, for instance. That would be something he would pull back on. So I'm happy to see he's not pulling back, and I hope he doesn't. I'm shocked to hear the internet community was throwing John Cena's name in there for people that he hurt. Like they could give a rat's ass that John Cena got hurt. Yeah. Seth is money. I love watching him work.
Yeah, I know he's awesome, but it looks like he could be out 4 to 6 months. Sheamus had a similar injury; he was out for a long time. So that hopefully by Royal Rumble around that time. Otherwise, 6 months from now, that's like end of February.
Fastlane, I think, right before WrestleMania.
So before WrestleMania, but man, that's a long time away for having just made his debut and for them really putting the jet packet on him. So so unfortunate.
Real quick, Raj, do you think we were talking about last night a little bit about the character of Finn Balor, the Demon King and everything. Do you think maybe this gives them the time to see what they had, to see what they put out there, to see the conundrum that they were about to run into with which do they go with? Do they do the Demon King every night? Do they not? Do you think that gives them the time now to finally figure something out and say, this is the way we're going to go with Finn when he comes back. This is what his character is going to be. He's going to be indestructible or he's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think they should, but it sounded like Sami Zayn was on Chris Jericho's podcast, and it sounded like they're set on him just doing the demon thing for pay-per-views. He actually thought he was going to be dropping the demon thing completely, when he got to WWE. But it sounds like they're going to keep it just for pay-per-views and do what they've been doing with NXT.
Okay.
Now, I think in the long run, provided that Finn's injury isn't more serious, I think this is going to end up working out for him very, very well in the long term, that the fans had this great SummerSlam match. They saw the Demon. They got a sense of what it was, and they saw just enough that they're going to go crazy for it when he comes back. I think it's going to work out pretty well in the big picture. But with Finn, what he did in the ring tonight, so the show, opened with him coming to the ring, relinquishing the title. He came across, I think, more, you saw that good guy side of him more than we did in what they did before with his limited interaction with Rollins. I think this just firmly established him as that, the Irish boy next door as the face. We've seen the Demon, this other side of him, and now when he comes back, I think he's going to get all that goodwill and all that it factor of the Demon rolled into one, and I think it's going to be huge,
Someone's asking, Matt, what do you think? The day that Finn, Finn getting injured and the match that he got the title, do you think WWE will have any reservations on putting the title back on him again?
If he has any naysayers, yeah. From what I've heard, he doesn't really have any. Everybody likes him. He gets along with all the boys, but most importantly, the staff loves him, and they should love him. He's a very hard worker, and he usually is very durable. So I don't think that's a great question. I know what they're alluding to. They're alluding to, is this another Daniel Bryan situation where this gives them the rationalization to go, oh, we tried it, it didn't work, he's injury prone, oh, he's too small. Or no, I don't think that's going to happen here. I honestly don't. I pray it doesn't, because he's another one that could be money for them.
Yeah. Well, and he suffered that injury, shoulder coming out. You could see, popping his shoulder back in and continuing the match. That's, testament to just what
yes, that is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So that happened at the start of the show, and then from there, just rapid fire. We had Seth Rollins come out, Sami Zayn come out, Kevin Owens come out, Jericho come out, Enzo and Cass come out, Roman Reigns come out, and they really set up that we're going to have some matches and then build towards a fatal four-way on next week's Monday Night Raw from Houston. Do you think it's smart for them, Matt, that they're just very quickly trying to get a champ in place as opposed to waiting till Night of the Champions?
That's a good question. How far away are we from Night of the Champions? How far?
It's the 25th, so we're about 1 month exactly.
And it's Clash of Champions.
Clash of the Champions, sorry.
No, I think they're smart to get somebody with that title as soon as possible. It's a new title. Somebody should be wearing it. But at the same time, Big Cass, no offense, should be nowhere near this picture. I'm sorry. Both Jericho and Owens should be. There's more people that should be in this than before Cass. And the reason I say that is because they're packaged together as a tag team. No one's going to believe he has a chance at winning. I don't think he has a chance at winning. Do you?
Matt, I could almost see them putting Big Cass in that picture. They did it with Ryback when Cena got hurt, when CM Punk was champ.
Right, but he wasn't in the tag team. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but they've kind of been phasing Enzo down a little bit. Like, he didn't wrestle tonight. He kind of took the fall last night. I can almost see them, because who else do they got? I think it's clear that they're going to keep Roman with Rusev. So who else do you put Seth in there with? Like you said, you could have easily got Samoa Joe. They chose not to do that. So I don't see who else.
Both Jericho and KO, both of them.
They could, but the fact that they beat Jericho right off the bat, KO's a heel. I don't see them having KO and Seth Rollins.
No, I mean out of the guys in this four-way match, I'm saying.
Gotcha. But yeah, I thought it was clear in this opening segment that it seemed very unorganized, because the guys came out and they're just staring. No one said a single word, And then Neville wasn't out, so it was just I felt like they were just trying to kill a little time and plan. But to what you asked, Glenn, I think it's a good idea to have a champ by Clash of Champions, and I thought it was a good idea not to do it tonight, so it gives them a little time to plan, just in case they are thinking about Big Cass, to second guess that and look at their alternatives clearly.
Yeah. And so we went to the first match with Sami Zayn versus Seth Rollins. Now, was that a work with Sami selling that ankle injury during?
100%.
Yeah. He sells well. I'm telling you, on Reddit,
yes,
I was seeing online, everyone was just like, oh my God, not again. Our beloved fan favorite gets injured. Something about it, it's like...
they would have stopped that match right away.
I know. Well, you have to ask, because it's one of those things when it happens right after, it's like, okay, is this WWE taking the piss and saying, like, okay, we're going to do this as the angle right after an injury, or it's legitimate? But I guess that's good. I guess it's what keeps people guessing, right? Similar to the confusion about the Orton-Lesnar match last night, was it a work or not? And I think that's the thing. It's like we're in this era of injury. So it certainly adds that other dynamic where it's not so far-fetched, especially if a guy can sell it. But, I mean, my only real I thought it was a good match altogether. My only complaint is that, I would have liked to have seen Sami in that Fatal 4-Way. I thought once he was up against Seth, I was like, just had a feeling. It's like, okay, well, Sami's getting eaten in the first round of this.
Yeah. Same exact thought. I was pissed. I would love to have seen Sami in that four-way. And then and my man Cesaro stuck with Sheamus, or was, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Best of 7, and they didn't do match number 2 tonight. They said next week, so this is going to go on.
Yeah, so it's going to go on longer than we thought.
Go on, like all the way to the Rumble. It's just that's Cesaro's career path.
Yeah.
Raj, what'd you think of the opening match, Rollins versus Zayn?
I thought it was really good. Again, Sami Zayn's outstanding. But I think between the two, you got to have Rollins go over. So yeah, I think it was the good opener, but all the matches I thought tonight were predictable as for who was going over, but they were good, and I thought this was good.
Yeah. So we went from that, came back, and we had the second match, which was Neville versus Kevin Owens. Now again, as Raj mentioned, Neville not announced for this at the beginning. Matt, what did you think of the pairing, seeing Neville versus Owens?
Another, hitting the brick wall. You know what I mean? 100-mile-an-hour Lambo smashing into a brick wall. This is not. I mean, I get that this is what happens when you have a brand split and you have two thin-out rosters now, because we're just trying to build. We're just supposed to be trying to build homeboy, and now all of a sudden he goes into Kevin Owens, and they have to have him do the job. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Owens has to go over here, obviously. So it's just like between a rock and a hard place for them right there. That's a tough spot. I wouldn't have given him that match. It was a great match for our entertainment, but I think it hurts, Neville.
Yeah, they could really use Neville, with the lack of depth that they have over 3 hours. I mean, I feel like they have more depth than SmackDown, but having that extra hour just kills when you don't have any top guys. But yeah, I thought it was a good match. Owens going over. I mean, they kind of always keep Owens in that spot where he's, just scratching the surface, but they don't really bring him up there.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
I don't know what he needs to do. He is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Especially, but I think once there's a firmly established top face, someone for Owens to really go up against, I think that'll make a lot more sense. Right now, I feel like aside from Zayn, he hasn't really had a great conflict in recent memory, with anyone else. And him with Jericho, I mean, that's just so money. And seeing last night with Zayn with Neville makes me think that having both of those together in the tag picture opens up some interesting ways to keep a reinvigorated feud, with the Owens-Zayn thing without just repeating the past.
Yeah.
So we came off that match and we had Big E versus Carl Anderson. So Big E is back, as we saw last night in SummerSlam. I gotta say, this match to me just felt like it was over really quick. All things considered. I mean, it didn't really do anything for me. But Raj, what did you think?
It almost felt like they were putting an end to the Gallows and Anderson, tag title feud with New Day with this match. Just how quickly it was over, and New Day was triumphant. I hope that's not the case, but and with the Dudleys later, it almost seemed like it was their way to just kind of move on.
I knew people would think that with the whole Dudley thing at the end of the night, because that's a complete curveball, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I honestly think it was done for that reason, for them to go out and make a statement, to keep getting them steam, keep getting them some heat. I'm talking about them putting down the Dudleys, and this is that 50-50 booking really at its finest again. They lost a singles match, but we still need to keep some steam on them, and what better way than go ruin, a table spot. But again, I don't know. I don't like seeing the singles matches when it's the tag teams. If it's supposed to be a rebooted tag division, then let's see some tag matches.
Yeah.
So coming out of that, we had for many what probably universally considered the low point of the evening, Titus ONeil giving a very long promo to be interrupted by Bob Backlund and Darren Young. Matt, is there anything to be said about this, or just is it best?
Nope, no comment.
I will say this: I think Titus could be good. I think Titus could be good on the mic, but you take a guy who has had no mic time in a while, and then have him go out and cut a 5-minute promo just out of the blue. It's nerve-wracking, and you could tell he was flubbing his lines a bit. I mean, it takes a while to get used to it. So it was brutal. I felt bad for Titus. But the thing with Bob Backlund, I don't think a 67-year-old man should be taking bumps from Titus ONeil. I mean, Titus is a beast.
He is.
It seemed, I don't know, this feud cannot end soon enough.
Yeah, but the Backlund's run-in, to me, that was the high point. Actually have him get in there and try and get the crossface on him. At least it was something. But yeah, Titus is having a very interesting year. In the WWE. So we came back from that. We looked, throughout the night we saw a lot of Lesnar versus Orton. Stephanie did say that there would be repercussions. Do you think they're going to do anything with the storyline, Raj, going forward with Brock Lesnar and on Raw?
I hope not. Just because every time, there's so many times in the past. Because Lesnar, he comes, he's there for a couple months, and then he goes because he's there for limited dates. Mm-hmm. And they've done the suspension angle so many times, and him quitting. They've already done that like 3 or 4 times. That if they do another suspension, I just don't think anyone will buy it. They'll know he's going to be back around Royal Rumble time at the latest. So, but the fact that they brought it up and he did do something with Shane. I do think they got to go somewhere with it, so it'll probably lead to a suspension, a suspension angle.
Yep, that's exactly where they're going with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, what did you think about the match itself last night and that ending?
I liked it. I actually loved it. Even though with the finish, with the match beforehand. A little bit earlier, I still thought that match did justice again to Brock being an absolute animal, untamable, unforgiving, just unrelenting monster. You know what I mean? That's just something we talk about, that he gives off that aura.
Now, I don't know if we should. We'll discuss this later, but the whole Matt, did you hear about the backstage scuffle between Chris Jericho and Brock? Yeah, so we'll definitely get to that after the Raw review.
Yeah, later in the episode. We came back from that. We had another Fatal 4-Way qualifier with Rusev versus Big Cass. This match, interesting that it ended by countout, with Rusev just sort of taking his bruised ribs and going home. What did you think about that decision to have the match play out how it did, Matt?
I didn't like it. I like Rusev a lot, so I'm a little biased. I just think they should be doing a hell of a lot more with Rusev altogether. I just, again, wrong place, wrong time, wrong guy. This is not the guy that you feed to him. And then if you're trying to get Cass over, he's beating a one-legged man, with his injured ribs. What does that do? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I liked it better than him beating Rusev clean or, something like that. Because what we were talking about just a few minutes ago as far as where they go from this. If they do go with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins again, which is kind of the predictable way to go, then I guess it would probably be Big Cass. If they get him out of the tag team situation, it would probably be Big Cass stepping into Roman's shoes against Rusev. So at least you don't give away a clean win here, and you could keep it going. But I guess I didn't have a problem with that just for that reason.
Speaking of one-legged men, Matt, did you have any overlap with Zach Gowen when you were at WWE?
Overlap?
Yeah, were you there when he was there?
Yeah.
I was just curious. I just resisted beating a one-legged man, and I was like, wait, the WWE's actually done that before. Actually had a one-legged
Lesnar's beaten Zach Gowen.
Yeah.
That was right when I was ready to be called up. I was doing a dark that night that Brock was throwing him down the flight of stairs and stuff. It's ridiculous.
Crazy.
I don't think they would do that in the modern era. I think they have a little more sensitivity than that. But that's one of those, some people, when that comes up, a lot of people can't even believe that ever happened. I have to show them the YouTube video.
They still surprise me, like the Johnny, we'll get to that Johnny knockout.
That nuanced moment. So yeah, Big Cass advances. This, I think in the darkest timeline is maybe going the way a lot of people predicted. If Cass wins, Enzo becomes his manager or mouthpiece. But I don't know. I mean, we'll talk about our predictions for the outcome of the Fatal 4-Way next week, a little later in the episode. But first, before we go any further, I want to take a moment and remind everyone, don't forget to try out DDP Yoga, specifically their awesome Max Pack, which is used by the likes of Chris Jericho, AJ Styles, Mick Foley, and tons of other WWE stars who love using DDP Yoga. And hey, you can get a special offer with 3 months of the app for free at ddpyoga.com/wrestlinginc. Also, The Resurrection of Jake the Snake, now available on iTunes, Google Play, PlayStation, Amazon, and Vudu, so make sure to check that out and tweet DDP Yoga. Let them know that we sent you. You can also catch the film on DVD, Blu-ray, and Netflix. DDP Yoga has a great cameo on one of the episodes of Holy Foley, which I started watching last night, and everyone that uses it seems to love it. Highly recommend it, DDP Yoga.
And as always, be sure to check out Trendy Butler, a fantastic clothing service that I've used. That I wear the stuff that they sent me all the time, and they do all the work for you. Which, if you're like me and hate going clothes shopping, it's perfect. You select a style profile, and then they have a stylist handpick clothes for you. Even better, for only $65, you get over $150 in designer clothes. Make sure you use the code WRESTLING10 at sign up to get $10 off. Again, that's Trendy Butler, and you can find out more about them at trendybutler.com, on Twitter at Trendy Butler, and on Instagram at Trendy Butler.
So tonight it happened. I think it was, very, very telegraphed. We all knew it was happening, but finally Bayley made her debut on the main roster. Sasha Banks is out. Raj, can you just shed some quick insight into Sasha's medical situation?
There's not that much known yet. They're saying that she's going to have a medical evaluation at the beginning of September. But apparently she's been having some pain in her lower back. That's why the match at SummerSlam was switched. It was supposed to be Sasha going over, got switched to Charlotte. And yeah, that's kind of where it's at. She's they have her listed for live events, in a little over a month, but nothing until then. So yeah, there you have it.
Yeah, so Bayley has now entered the women's division picture of Monday Night Raw, and we had Charlotte come out, sort of do her spiel. Mick came out, brought Bayley out. Great pop from the crowd, perfect crowd to debut her in front of, and it set up a brief but pretty good match between Bayley and Dana Brooke. Matt, what were your thoughts about this introduction and how they're handling Bayley in her debut?
First, how she was, debuted here. When she first came out, and she was going to her, her tagline, her hug line, if you will. There was no need there because she's that over, and she is that big of a baby face, and she was that recognizable tonight. It's undisputable. Okay, you heard the crowd. I heard them. There was no need to throw in the cheesy Mick line. Do you know what I mean? We didn't need that. No, and I'm not saying that. I know Mick didn't want that either. I know enough about Mick to know how much he thinks of Bayley in the women's division that he was probably like, we probably won't need that here. You know what I mean? That's usually a bailout when somebody like a Hall of Famer, level like a Mick Foley or a Ric Flair or someone on that level, millions of times, will bail you out of a promo with their famous tagline. And the whole idea is to give the newer talent the rub, if you will. Bayley did not need any type of verbal rub there. That was her tagline, and I don't know why the writers wrote it that way to insert Mick's there. You know what I mean? And almost stepped on Bayley's pop, if you will, on her own accord.
Let me ask you this, Matt, because this is something we see a lot, where you debut an NXT star the night after a big pay-per-view, where a big portion of the crowd knows who they are. But then it kind of fizzles out once they start going to markets where it's not as much of a percentage of the NXT crowd. Do you think that it'll sustain over the next few weeks, or do you think that they should start doing more builds for a lot of these guys coming up from NXT?
I see both sides of that. Honestly, I always think you should definitely build people up before they come in, whether we know them from NXT or not. But that said, the other side of the coin is, I'm not trying to talk about both sides of my mouth, but the downside of that is you lose the element of surprise. NXT is chock full of talent right now that are going to make huge splashes when they come in a surprise type scenario, and we lose that by running these vignettes before they come up. So I see both sides of it. I prefer to see the surprise side of it, like we did tonight, without any vignettes. And honestly, it's important that first night they come out, they do receive that massive pop. You do it in that demographic, because then everyone at home in Iowa sitting there watching, they're going, well, wait a minute, she's a huge star. Monkey see, monkey do. You know what I mean? That's generally the way it works. Not all the time, but more times than not. If I'm hearing a crowd pop a certain way for any type of talent, and I'm a little kid at home watching this, I'm going, well, shoot, that must be a huge star. I need to be cheering that person. That's the thought behind it, at least. The problem has been, to answer your question, is the lack of follow-up the next week and the week after and the week after. Even tonight, I didn't think that should have been her first match. I think her first match should have been shorter. It should have been nothing but highlight her strengths and save what she does best, which is sell. She could sell all day long, and I think they could have done, saved a little bit of the sympathetic side of Bayley for when we would have wanted to see it more. You know what I mean? Tonight should have been a showcase match. It shouldn't have been as long as it was. Just her doing her thing and hitting all of her spots. A feel-good moment, because the crowd, that's all they wanted to see. You could hear them in the crowd doing their Hey Bayley chants and not really watching the match, because the match started getting a little long there. Long in the tooth a little bit there.
No, I thought it was an interesting setup. I mean, if anything, I think the thing they didn't do was that when she came in, if I were them, I would have, kept that girl Izzy and her family there the extra day. I would have had Bayley going in and hugging every kid along the ramp.
Yes.
I felt like they didn't put that over enough. She hugged, I think, one guy and then one little girl, and then was right in the ring. Because I think, to your point, Raj, they're going to be in Houston next week, and I think they'll get a good core response. But I think that putting that image out there will give her that same impact she had in NXT. People will start bringing their daughters, bringing their little kids, and really put her over as someone that has this just massive age spectrum appeal. Because she's going to get, the internet wrestling nerds. I think she's got that crowd already. But I think that just telegraphing that, hey, this is the female Cena is here on the roster, and really, really pushing that hard. That was my only real note. The match with Dana I thought was good. I thought she made Dana look good tonight. But I think that they could have done that more to just show that, like, hey, this is the kid, the most kid-friendly star we've ever had in the WWE.
100%. Nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Raj, any final thoughts on Bayley's introduction tonight?
No, we'll just have to see if it maintains. Again, I'm always for building first because, let's face it, a lot of these, when you go to the buildings where there's a lot of parents and kids and not as much as the young adults, it's not as much of an NXT crowd. But Bayley's going to get over to kids event, at some point. She's going to be huge with them. So
that's the difference between her and the rest of them, by the way, is that right there.
Yeah.
She's a walking Care Bear.
No, totally.
You can't hate her.
Yeah, that's, and I think that's why, she just has such a great fan base. I see it online, and I feel the way too. It's like she's one of those, like, she makes you believe. She like taps into that.
It's all authentic. That's who she is, man.
Yep. No, absolutely. So we came from that to an interesting cool down in the Bronze. Well, first we had a little interview with Sheamus, talked some smack about Cesaro and the local sports teams, mentioned the second best of 7.
That was the weakest cheap heat line. It's like, be a little original when you're insulting like the sports teams.
So there we have it, Matt. That's something I find even lazier than the anti-American cheap heat knocking the sports teams.
Yeah.
Sheamus just trotted it right out there.
Yeah.
Surprised he didn't talk about Cesaro's mom while he was at it. We came with that, and then we had the Braun Strowman squash match. Now, let's see how to best describe this. This is one where I feel like on paper it doesn't really do it justice. We went to Byron Saxton in the ring with Johnny Knockout, who, when asked why he was doing it, he just said he likes big sweaty men. That was it. No follow-up.
Well, they said they're going to be doing more of an outreach to the LGBT community. I'm not sure that this is what they were looking for, but man, I was like just scratching my head over that one. All right.
If that was a shoot and that guy just got blacklisted, totally worth it.
I doubt he did that.
Guys, wake up. That's 100% the writing team having a laugh, thinking it's funny, and the poor kid had to go out and say that stupid line.
Yeah.
He did look uncomfortable.
The rest of us are dumber for watching it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That just it just makes you're just like, this is why no one watches wrestling anymore.
That was the moment, Raj. That was the moment. You nailed the phrasing of it correctly. The moment where if someone else is in the room that's not a fan and sees that, you're just embarrassed for them, embarrassed for everyone involved at that point, Yeah. But most of all yourself, because you were the one who put it on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we have the squash. What'd you think of the squash itself? Just continuing the trek. Is this building?
It looks like they're just rotating Braun and Nia Jax. If Braun got the squash this week, Nia will get it next week. They're just doing the same thing with both. And
guys, go back and watch. I'll give you a list. Myself, Heidenreich, Snitsky. Who else? It's got to be 6. Let's say 6'8", 6'9", and above. Anybody above that height frame, I'd say, they have the same exact formula. Every single one of those guys I just mentioned, except for actually Snitsky, I take him off that list. He started with Kane. He was lucky. The rest of us, they generally will have us. You run through indie talent for X amount of weeks, and they like hope and pray somehow through osmosis that the big guy somehow gets crazy over, or they can do something now to bring him to that next level. They always say they're doing it to bring us along slowly, but then there's never that next second step. There's either this next humongous step, or there's, what do we do with him now? He's too big to be selling, so we can't be having him work against this guy. It doesn't look right, doesn't look natural. So we don't do anything with him at all. Like, that's a lot of the time with the issue they run into, and it's been happening for many, many, many years.
Yeah, I have a feeling if Vince had Goldberg, it would have happened with him, because Vince, Eric Bischoff went like a year with it before, and it didn't go. He didn't get over right away. It took a while,
right?
And he stuck with it. Vince, you get the big guys, like yourself, and you get the squashes for a little bit, and then they just kind of stop it, and then you're kind of off to the races, and you're treated like everyone else. And I don't know. I just feel like they haven't applied the formula the way when it works right. They haven't done that in a while. But yeah.
So we came out of that match to a segment with the Dudley Boyz. Now, this was interesting in that it seemed like, sort of a goodbye segment, then interrupted by everyone's favorite tag team, the Shining Stars, wanting to give the Dudley Boyz some tickets to Puerto Rico. And then before they could, put them through a table, we had the club come out and end up doing a magic killer on Devon to end the segment. So is this the passing of the torch, Raj? This was the Dudleys going out, putting the club over? Or this?
They had just re-signed like last month for another year, so I don't know if this was, unless maybe the report was inaccurate that they re-signed, or maybe they're going to be doing more behind the scenes. But I could have sworn this was the Mark Henry retirement angle, where they do it, they draw it out, and then Bubba Ray just nails Devon and turns heel, and I think a lot of people thought that's where it was going. And I don't know. It just seemed like if that was their send off, it just seems like maybe I don't know. It just seemed weird. My opinion is that they were going to start something with Gallows and Anderson against the Dudleys, at least for a short period, and then maybe the Dudleys are going out. What do you think, Matt? You think this was their last night on Raw?
No, and I'd be pissed if it was. Totally lacked I have no problem with anybody passing the torch, but you didn't even give the guys a chance to really do anything like they're capable of doing. If you want to bring them in to help build the division, then let them help you build the division. Use their overness, use their star power. No coming out with no music or entrance. They're a future Hall of Fame tag team.
Do you think this was a way for them to get their overness back?
It could be. That's not a bad point. I could see that. A little spotlight situation like that. Yeah, but I don't think they need they're the Dudley Boyz. They don't need a retirement angle to go out there and get themselves back on that main center stage, ta-da type perception that everybody has always had of them as a tag team. But I was so hoping Bubba was going to turn tonight, and I'm dying to see him do that character as a heel singles act. And I know you think it'd be watered down, but I was watching some of his stuff, at TNA when he did his bully race stuff. He didn't curse, he was just very vicious, and he has a great way of drawing the ire of people, even in today's PG community. I think he can definitely still do it.
I agree. I think he was fantastic. I just think it just seems like Vince hasn't pegged it at a certain role, and it's just that mentality. If he can change his mind, I'd love to see it, because he was fantastic during the Bully Ray run in TNA.
Yeah, I'll be curious next week if they pick up the thread here and just have it with the Dudleys going up against the club for a short storyline for a couple weeks, or if this was really it. But honestly, between everything this weekend, it's like I don't even know what to believe anymore. I don't know what's kayfabe, I don't know what's real, I don't know what's a work. It's just all the lines are so goddamn blurred. But I'll tell you one thing. I'll give $20. I will PayPal $20 to anyone. You could tweet at me. You can leave in the comments here. Explain to me why in the hell the Shining Stars are still on the roster and keep getting a push. Just explain to me, what the hook of their character is, how Creative thinks they're going to get over. I just want to understand at this point.
Glenn, that is no push, my friend.
They keep showing up.
But to your point, should they have any TV time whatsoever with what they're presenting? I agree. No.
Yeah. But I feel like every time that I just forget they exist, every time they're a distant memory, there they are again. At least tonight with the 2 tickets to Puerto Rico thing, that's the closest thing to a relevant contextual placement they've had since this horrible gimmick started.
I guess.
And I'm still convinced this is why Puerto Rico's broke. They gave Vince McMahon their money to promote Puerto Rico tourism. That's the only reason I can think of.
Glenn hates the Shining Stars.
I could almost, because there's some things that I start hating so much that I start to love them, but with them it's just legitimate sort of frustrated indifference, really, more than anything else.
You look at how TNA has treated their ethnic tag teams in the past, like with LAX and stuff like that. They did a way better job than what WWE is doing. I mean, come to Puerto Rico as opposed to what they, what TNA did with LAX. It's like night and day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, and I was I could do an entire podcast on my frustration with the Shining Stars. I'll spare the rest. So moving on, we came back from the Dudley's Shining Stars Club segment to the last Fatal 4-Way qualifier: Chris Jericho versus Roman Reigns. Matt, what did you think, and did it fall in line with how you felt it was going to go?
Yeah, definitely. Phenomenal match. First of all, Chris Jericho is a freaking artist, and he's so goddamn good. He's still impresses me to this day with what he's still able to get out of people. Like, I'm not saying Roman Reigns is just some stiff or some broomstick there that he was in the ring with, but God, everything. Watch the end of that match. Every fan watching this right now, go back if you guys can and watch tonight's match, and watch specifically one part. I want you to watch where the very last schoolboy by Jericho on Reigns. They didn't even get a 1 count out of it. Reigns rolls up and has a long way to go to hit those ropes before he hits that spear. Watch Chris Jericho, who just tried to go for the schoolboy, didn't get even a 1 count out of it, immediately does a half a spin circle around to feed for that perfect spear. If he doesn't do that one little half spin move, that move looks like crap. It will look like dog crap because of the timing of it. Roman had such a far run to hit those ropes to explode off that way. I know it seems like something small, but it's something that's big, and Chris does this in every one of his matches. Everything is perfect. It's succinct, everything. There wasn't Jericho. There was the perfect time of the match to put that on, and just everything. The timing in it was just impeccable. And again, it makes Roman look great.
Yeah, and just him also, doing the always getting out of the spear. It just, kept wanting people for him to finally get it, and he's dodging out of the way and doing creative ways to get out of it. I thought Jericho looked fantastic. I thought Reigns looked great. This match was awesome. Yeah. I thought, you knew Reigns was going to win, but man, Jericho did a great job of, of putting him over. They had a good couple of false spots that weren't your traditional false spots with, hitting your finisher and, the referees out or whatever. So I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you this: next week, if when they present the WWE Universal Championship, and if they replaced it with the women's belt, do you think you'd be able to tell?
You know what? You brought that up last night, and I didn't give it enough credit. You hit the nail on the head. Yes, nobody would know the difference whatsoever. How hard is it to pick any other color than red? I get it. It's Raw. That's their colors. Great. It looks like the women's title. I watched them on, what was it, Good Morning America this morning, I think it was, or whatever it was, the morning show, and both Charlotte and Finn, and they both look like they're holding the same championship up on each shoulders.
They look like tag team champions.
It did.
That would be an intergender or mixed gender tag team, Charlotte.
Glenn.
Which they've done with Jericho.
Yeah.
They did that with Jericho in China.
Yeah. But more importantly, Glenn, thanks for clearing that up.
Yes, not intergender, pardon me. Although with the LGBTQ, there could be an intergender. Gold Dust could go full 97. That's all I'm saying. And just bring it back to the new era. So all in all, for scrambling to replace whatever the original planned storyline was, I'm sure we'll be hearing about that and seeing articles on Wrestling Inc. in the coming days or week about what was originally planned for Balor's first Monday Night Raw as champion. As far as, sort of flying by the seat of their pants, Matt, what did you think of the episode of Raw overall?
I love the in-ring action. I love the stories the boys told in the matches tonight. I think because it was what it was, you didn't have time to build a lot of backstories. This wasn't a situation, this wasn't a night to have some heated rivalries and these long brewing storylines that were, finally coming to some conclusion and a crescendo in the middle of the ring. Okay, that wasn't what tonight's purpose was. It was to get back on track. And through competition, let's put on the best matches we can, and let's have the quote-unquote best guy win. And that's what they delivered tonight. I thought the matches tonight were awesome.
They were great. It was just, but for a title being vacated, I thought it was just by the numbers. I think like there's so much you could have done. You could have had everyone coming out on the ramp at the beginning, and them not announce at the beginning of the show what's going to happen. And the whole story of the whole show is what's going to happen with this title. Where is it going to go? Who, are they going to do a tournament? You have backstage segments where people approaching Stephanie and Foley asking what's going on, and they keep putting it off, and then later they say, okay, we're going to announce what we're going to do, tonight. And then, they put off the tournament, the semifinal, the quarterfinals till next week. And that way you're just building a show around the title and this big deal. And instead you just kind of, you mention it, and then it's your standard Raw. So anyway, that's my thing. I just miss the days when things were made a big deal.
But we just had a month of building towards crowning this first champion, and I think that's why they were afraid of letting it go on much longer. I mean, look, if I had it my way, they just would have put the belt up there on a hook and have a 20-man, battle royal ladder match.
It's a big deal. Treat it like a big deal. Yeah, I mean, But anyway.
Give it to Seth Rollins. Give it to him already. Good Lord, he is so good.
But I think he's better, though, Matt, if the angle is that Seth is the heir apparent every time and then someone keeps beating him for it. Because seeing Seth as the frustrated guy who thinks that it's his, to me, is just so wildly entertaining.
But, Matt, with what they have right now, assuming they're not going to call anyone up from NXT like Samoa Joe, what do you do with Seth? What do you do starting next week and up till the next pay-per-view?
That's a hell of a question. They don't have enough strong... They got to fast forward. They were supposed to fast forward someone like Sami Zayn, Neville. These are not the time. This is not the time for guys like that losing. Cesaro not being stuck over there doing that crap. This is the time to get them in fast forward now. It really wouldn't be fast forwarding Cesaro, by the way. The crowd's been dying to see him in this position forever, and they've chanted it millions of times. I don't know what else the guy needs to do. Those three guys right there. There's no reason why they shouldn't be on the fast track. Sami Zayn, I don't get what else he needs to do.
Right,
I know he's still getting over. I get that, but still.
Right, but next week with where they're at, what would you do? Do you have Seth win, and then who do you go just back to Roman, which is the predictable thing? But man, that just feels like a step backwards.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling it'll be somebody that we don't see coming. But my take is Joe. I don't know.
See, I'm thinking it's Big Cass, and I hope I'm wrong. I don't want it, but
I want to see a big guy in this position. I know I sound like a little hater here, but no, I just don't think. I think it's gonna. I don't want it to hurt Cass. I want his development to be slow and like it needs to be. He's slowly getting over at a perfect pace. Don't rush him.
I agree, but Ryback. That's all I gotta say.
I'm surprised we didn't see tonight, and we talked about this Wednesday on the SmackDown. I'm surprised we didn't see Heath Slater showing up or added into the mix.
I think he's getting too over, and they're starting to get worried about it.
I know. But seriously, like I pointed this out on our SmackDown podcast Wednesday, Heath Slater, up until tonight, was on every single episode of The New Era, and his presence and prominence in the storyline kept growing and growing and growing. I mean, if you look at it now in hindsight, they built him more than anyone else in The New Era, even more than Finn, they built Slater.
He's always one of my favorite segments.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, Slater should have been somewhere in this Fatal 4-Way mix. That's all I'm saying. That's my,
Got a hell of a way exaggerating there, Glenn, but let's move on. I got you.
Okay, so let's go on and take a step back and talk about what happened last night backstage with Brock Lesnar and Chris Jericho. Raj, I know Wrestling Inc. has the complete story online, but for our listeners, do you want to give them a quick recap?
Apparently, Jericho, I guess he thought, I don't know if he thought that Lesnar took liberties or it kind of turned it into a shoot there at the end. He was asking backstage agents what was going on. I guess no one was telling him that was the planned finish, and so Lesnar came back. He overheard Jericho cussing, and kind of started mouthing off to Jericho, and then they got into it. Had to be separated, I guess, a couple times. Man, Jericho, the balls on that guy. I mean, who would go and stand up to Lesnar? I mean, you got to, and he, it was in a backstage fight with Goldberg. I mean,
Chris does not care. He does not give a rat's how big anybody is. I'm telling you, even if he got pounded, he wouldn't care. He'd still go out swinging. He is legit tough, Chris.
Yeah. So I was shocked. I think the one thing that was clear, like for me at least, watching the Lesnar Orton match is when he was nailing Orton those first couple shots, you could tell he was meaning to cut him open. He was meaning to hurt him because they were elbows, and that's what you do in MMA when you that's why they banned they banned him in Bellator, I think, to stop all the cuts. And so as soon as he busted him open, then Lesnar, his strikes were completely different. He was hitting like the shoulder and was just kind of flailing. You could tell he wasn't trying to hurt him after that. So it wasn't, you could tell it wasn't a shoot or anything, but I can probably from backstage it was probably hard to tell. But yeah, Jericho, I don't know if he was I wouldn't say he was in the right because it was the worked finish. Yeah, man, that guy's got balls.
I don't even think we needs to be discussed who's wrong or right. It's just what ended up happening at the end of the day, and the takeaway from this is of course I'm sure Brock would crush him, but everybody knows that. But Chris is a great example of what we were talking about with Conor McGregor shooting his mouth off about wrestlers. Okay, Chris Jericho is a great example of what I was telling you about. There are legit badasses in wrestling that could more than handle themselves. Chris is a great example of that. Chris can throw down, believe me.
Were you there when the whole backstage thing happened with Goldberg and Jericho?
On the other roster, I was in OVW on the road that week, but with the other brand, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, kudos to Chris for caring that much, and there's not many people that would want to stand, especially if that was a shoot. Would you want to get in there with and stand up to Lesnar if he's coming back and he just
baddest man on the planet?
Exactly. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But obviously Jericho seemed fine tonight. I'm sure everything's smoothed over, so I don't think anything's going to come of it.
Well, I think that's part of the confusion online. I mean, in the internet wrestling community, and certainly, the Smarky Marks and the Chunky Bunch, that are out there, we like to think we know a little bit about some behind-the-scenes stuff in the WWE. And one of the key facts that you see often is you don't bleed in the ring. So the idea that the planned finish was for Randy to get busted open and have it be TKO because he's bleeding out all over the ring, and can't get up. I mean, that seems like that goes against everything we think we know to be true. So I guess in a way that's sort of a swerve ending on
the fact that they called it a TKO told me immediately it was a work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And why not just blade to get that finish? Doesn't that seem like because one of those elbows from Lesnar, it could knock you out.
Right, but listen, Randy Orton does not beat around the bush when it comes to people trying to hurt him. Brock or anybody, trust me. So if there was something that went on that shouldn't have gone on, I'm sure Raj, with your website, you would have heard this news break as well, that Randy was pissed or Randy was this. I've heard nothing but the contrary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Randy was telling everybody it was a work, you know what I mean? Randy would be the very first one to be like, F that,
No, but absolutely, I agree. I don't think it was a shoot in any way. What I'm saying is, wouldn't it have been easier and safer to just do a blade?
On top of the head?
Yeah, that way you guarantee blood. That way he doesn't, if he doesn't cut him right off the bat, he doesn't have to keep going.
You blade here, you don't want to blade up there.
Yeah, well.
But isn't that the thing, though? Brock's thing is Brock likes to be busted open the hard way. So it doesn't seem like that makes Orton seem like kind of, a wimp to be like, no, I'm going to blade. It's cool. It's
not when some Neanderthal is going to bust his head open. No, it doesn't.
I don't know. No, are people this way towards Brock? I mean, my story that I love is what was the one Daniel Bryan was telling everyone that Ryback was like, I got to take a Cialis before I go in the gym to impress Brock with what a man I am. So is there sort of a behind the scenes machismo? I mean, does it seem like Brock is the guy that's raised the bar on that? Maybe the other performers feel like they need to sort of step up to that and not back down?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm just curious.
No,
I don't know. Locker rooms can be competitive places.
Man with families, dude. That stuff was done in high school.
And it's funny because that's exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking I was on the high school wrestling team, and I was like, I remember what that locker room was like. So good. I'm glad it's a more evolved place. But I thought that was just a weird sort of letdown finish to SummerSlam last night. I thought the Finn Rollins match was great, and then just to go into that with Reigns and Rusev and then Brock and Randy, it seemed to me like just the wind was out of the sails at that point.
Yeah.
I like I love the uncomfortability of it. Oh, shut up.
Yeah, I will say this: the only problem I had was that they had kind of like two non-finishes in a row. Like you hadn't seen the Roman Reigns match last night, but doing that finish and then doing the Lesnar. But I agree. I thought it was still kind of great in a sick way.
Cool. Well, on that note, thanks to everyone for tuning in and staying with us here. You've just watched a lot of wrestling in the past couple days, and this night you're tuning into the Wrestling Inc. podcast. You're watching us live or listening to us later to hear the recap. So you are the hardcore fans. We do this for you. Of course, we'll be back here on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern to talk about SmackDown Live, the first SmackDown Live after SummerSlam. If you like the show, subscribe, like us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, tweet at us. All our Twitters are listed in the show notes. And Matt, thanks for joining us once again. We'll see you back here next Monday. Raj, I will see you on Wednesday with David Bixenspan to talk about SmackDown. If you want more thoughts and you didn't listen to it yet about SummerSlam, go back, check out the podcast last night with Raj, Vince Russo, and Matt Morgan, and we will see you here next time on the Wrestling Inc. podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Don't ever mention Vince before me again.
It's in your contract.